Hi there, welcome to my presentation. My name is Mauwa from the University of Mpumalanga. I'm working there as a lecturer in the School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences. Our research focus in this project is on digital integration into the teaching and learning of the high school curriculum. And the title of our paper is an overview of the integration of basic research and the digital skills in the high school curriculum. So in this presentation, I will talk about the motivation and the problem area, the research objectives, the research approach and methodology, the results, as well as the conclusion. Research, as well as the literature, shows that basic education institutions are still facing challenges to integrate digital skills into their teaching and learning. And the level again of ICT integration into the teaching and learning of the secondary school is still low at the moment, even though the initiative to integrate ICT into the teaching and learning has been there for quite some time. Surprisingly, the research actually shows that increasing access to ICT resources doesn't lead to increased integration of technology into the teaching and learning. So by just giving schools computers, that doesn't translate into the increased integration of teaching and learning. So again, literature shows that current guidelines provide very little information on how schools can practically integrate ICT into their teaching and learning. So we thought this to be our main research area where we can actually come up with a solution. So the research objectives are as follows. The first one was to evaluate the current curriculum design and teaching approaches of the life orientation subject. And then after we've done the evaluation, to develop a process model for the integration of basic research and the digital skills into the life orientation curriculum. So the choice of the subject, the life orientation subject, was really based on the fact that the life orientation is a cross-cutting subject. It tackles so many aspects of our lives. And again, on top of that, it's taken by almost all the students, high school students. So we thought like, okay, integrating ICT into teaching and learning of a subject that is taken by many students is going to have a major impact. So the methodology, the research methodology that we adopted was design science research, and we decided to use this because our project is actually divided into phases, and this approach allows us to do that, to achieve that without having any problems. And again, we use purposive case study as well as purposive sampling. So two schools, one from the Eastern Cape and the other from Mpumalanga, were actually selected. And these schools, we focused on these two provinces because the researchers for the project, they're all coming from these two provinces. So some researchers are working at the University of Mpumalanga, others are working at Water University in the Eastern Cape. And the sampled schools had also already an established partnership with the universities involved. And on top of that, they had also the computer resources in place. And again, we involved 4 teachers that are teaching the life orientation module in grade 10 to 12. So these are the data collection methods that we actually used. So we did a literature review of that's obvious. So this basically was done to just justify the research problem and to find the possible solution to the identified problem. While doing also the literature review, we gathered some challenges that schools, especially the ones coming from the historically disadvantaged areas, are facing, like computer resources, lack of digital skills. Yeah, these are just some of the challenges that we also identified during the literature review. During the document analysis, we reviewed a number of documents. We reviewed the National Curriculum Statement Program Guidelines, the National Life Orientation Curriculum. We also reviewed the life orientation teaching and learning activities, as well as the assessment. Then finally, we also looked at the white paper on e-education. And then on our workshops and brainstorming sessions, this is where teachers had a chance to present their teaching and learning activities. Like we looked at the exercises, the notes, the assessments, as well as the marking rubrics. So during these sessions, we also conducted a review process to identify the alignment of the content against the national curriculum. And we discovered that the content alignment was actually consistent with the national curriculum. This is the diagram for design science research methodology. As I actually said that our project is divided into phases, so we have got 4 phases. So we are reporting on the first and the second phase. So the first phase actually involves identifying the problem and the motivation, and also defining the objectives of the solution. And then the second phase is the designing and the development of your proposed solution. So phase 3 and phase 4, these are basically work in progress. We'll report on them later on. But they basically involve, like phase 3 involve demonstration. So we'll test our proposed process model, we'll implement it and test it. And then the last phase is about now evaluating. So we have extended it to say, okay, after evaluation, for sure, we also need to report on that. So in developing the solution, the research team has actually followed these steps. We reviewed 4 learning outcomes for grade 10 to 12 of the life orientation curriculum depicted in the National Curriculum Statement Program Guidelines and identified the assessment standards linked to these outcomes. And then we also identified current assessment practices through reviewing the existing assessment activities of the piloted schools. And then we also identified the gaps in the use of the basic research and digital skills in the assessment activities. And then finally, based on what we've covered in the first 3 steps, we proposed a solution that is aligned in each reviewed assessment activity, which in turn assists in integrating the research and the digital skills in the assessments. So finally, from this, we actually came up now with a process model for the basic research and digital skills integration into the life orientation curriculum. So we've got those 4 phases, which I already discussed. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Phase 1, just a review of the national curriculum description, identifying of the objectives of the curriculum, identifying the outcomes and assessment criteria. And then phase 2 consists of 2 activities. So you develop activities that integrate basic research and digital integration. And then we also develop the assessment criteria for the identified outcomes and activities. And then phase 3 is now the implementation. This is the implementation of the activities and the assessment criteria. And finally is the evaluation. For conclusion, just a recap of what I've been discussing. Basic education is lacking in integrating basic research and digital skills in teaching and learning approaches. And it is also noted that teaching and learning activities do not integrate ICT and e-education policies in these in secondary schools, in most of the secondary schools. But on a positive note, it was noted that the content taught on the life orientation subject was actually aligned to the National Life Orientation Curriculum. And based on the findings, those findings, they actually led to the development of the proposed process model, which presents the guidelines that may lead to the achievement of integration of basic research and digital skills into the life orientation curriculum. So this paper is just presenting on the two phases of the project. So there are also two phases that are remaining for the implementation. So we have proposed a process model. So we want to implement it and test it. So that is going to be done in phase 3. And then phase 4, it's about now the evaluation. So we'll do evaluation after we've implemented the process model. Thank you so much for listening. That's the end of my presentation. These are some of the references that I used when I was preparing the presentation slides.